To misuse God's name is to dishonor His holiness, reducing the sacred to the trivial. God's name is not a tool for exclamation, but a treasure to be revered. When we take God's name in vain, we not only dishonor Him, but we rob ourselves of the reverence due to His holiness. Taking God's name in vain reflects a heart that has forgotten the weight of His glory. The name of the Lord is not to be uttered lightly. It is sacred and must be respected. Words are powerful, and to use God's name carelessly is to disregard its divine power. To speak God's name in vain is to forget His majesty. To honor His name is to remember His holiness. The name of God is not for common speech. It is the name of the Almighty, worthy of our utmost respect. God's name is a refuge, not a phrase to be used flippantly. In honoring God's name, we demonstrate our respect for His sovereignty and our reverence for His holiness. God's name is sacred, not a tool for cursing, but a shield for the soul. To honor God's name is to acknowledge His supremacy in every area of life. Taking God's name in vain is an offense against His character and an insult to His love. God's name is the foundation of all truth, and to misuse it is to mock that foundation. Respect for God's name is the foundation of a life lived in awe and reverence. When you invoke the name of God, do so with humility, not as a curse or a mere expression. The name of the Lord is a sacred treasure to be handled with reverence, not a casual utterance. To misuse God's name is to treat Him as less than He is, but to honor His name is to reflect His greatness. Taking God's name in vain is a reflection of a heart that has lost its sense of awe before the Creator. A life that respects God's name will naturally reflect His holiness in all things. The name of God is not a slogan, it is the expression of His infinite greatness. Let every word we speak about God reflect the reverence and respect He deserves. To treat God's name carelessly is to forget the gravity of His divine nature. God's name is a gift, not to be used in vain, but to be protected and revered. When you call upon the name of the Lord, do so with awe, knowing you are invoking the power of the Creator. The holiness of God's name calls us to purity in thought, word, and deed. Taking God's name in vain is a symptom of a heart that has forgotten His holiness. God's name is a constant reminder of His authority over all things. We must treat it as such. To speak God's name carelessly is to dishonor the eternal God who is beyond all understanding. God's name is not a curse word, but a holy declaration of His power and majesty. When we speak God's name in vain, we are not just disrespecting Him, we are distorting our understanding of His holiness. God's name is not for our convenience. It is meant to draw us closer to His divine presence. To misuse God's name is to lose sight of His perfect nature and to trivialize His greatness. God's name is a reflection of His character. To misuse it is to misrepresent who He is. Taking God's name in vain is an act of spiritual ignorance, a disregard for His sacredness. In the reverence of God's name, we find peace, purpose, and direction. To dishonor God's name is to forget that He is the Creator of all things, worthy of all honor. God's name is not for profanity, but for praise. The name of the Lord should be spoken with reverence, for it is a name above all names. When we honor God's name, we are acknowledging the authority and greatness He alone deserves. Taking God's name in vain is a sign of spiritual negligence and a lack of respect for the divine. Every time we utter God's name, we are reminded of His holiness and the need for our reverence. In the sacredness of God's name, we find a reflection of His divine nature and our duty to honor Him. The misuse of God's name shows a lack of understanding of the holiness that surrounds His being. Let our speech reflect the reverence due to the name of the Almighty, for in His name is the power of salvation. God's name should not be a passing phrase, but a constant reminder of his eternal presence. Taking God's name in vain is a violation of the trust that comes with knowing him as our Creator and Savior. God's name is holy, and our words should never diminish its sacred value. To invoke God's name in vain is to forget the seriousness of his presence in our lives. To honor God's name is to honor the very essence of who he is, holy, powerful, and eternal.